G'day friends, it's Andrew Goodall here again from Nature's Image Photography, and in this video I'm finally going to take a proper look at the PANASONIC LUMIX S1. This has come to me on loan from Panasonic, and it's a real privilege for me to have the opportunity, and I wanted to get in front of the camera for a change, just once again to say thank you to Panasonic for the opportunity to give this a try. And I'm going to give you a look over the camera, and probably most importantly, when I get to the end, I'm going to show you some photographs to let you see what I've been up to with the camera since I've had it. They sent it to me with the 16 to 35 millimeter Panasonic Leica lens on it. So that's how I'll be using it. It's the only lens I've got for the camera at this stage, which is terrific because it means I'll be doing some ultra wide landscapes, which I really like. I use my Panasonic G9 mostly for wildlife and to a lesser extent portraits. So I really grabbed the opportunity to do some landscape photography with this camera. So I'm going to show you over the camera and give you some of my thoughts. And for people who follow me for the Panasonic Lumix G9 up until now, you might be interested to see what's similar but also what's different about this camera. And of course for new users, for new visitors to the channel, if you're finding me for the first time, I'll invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. And if you appreciate the time and effort I spend making these videos, you can always thank me with a coffee, and I will put a link to my Buy Me a Coffee page in the information below. The Panasonic Lumix S1 has been out for a few years now, and there are already lots of great technical reviews available online. I'm not what you would call a technical reviewer, so I'm putting a couple of links to some excellent DP reviews in the information below. But for people who are just learning about the S1, here's some essential info. The S1 is a 24 megapixel full-frame camera and is one of several full-frame cameras now available from Panasonic. You could say it has a big brother in the S1R, which has twice the megapixels, and a little brother in the S5, which has a similar 24 megapixel sensor, but is a fair bit smaller and more compact. I'd love to try the S5 sometime for comparison, but for now this is the only full-frame camera I've had a chance to play with. That 24 megapixel full-frame sensor sits inside a magnesium alloy body that weighs in at about 900 grams, including battery. That makes it one of the heavier cameras on the market, and that'll mean different things to different people. Some people will reject a camera like this based on the weight alone. Others will appreciate the confidence that comes with having such a robust, highly weather-sealed camera that can take a bit of a beating. It's all a matter of perspective, considering that it's actually not as heavy as the old Canon 7D Mark II. So if you're stepping up from a more compact camera like the G9, you'll definitely feel the difference. But if you grew up with film cameras and professional DSLRs, you may well enjoy that old school feel of a really solid, well-built camera. I can say that it's a really comfortable camera to hold. The right grip feels like it was made to fit in my hand, and it's really well balanced whether I hold it in landscape or portrait position. So while it's relatively heavy, I don't find it a difficult camera to manage. When it comes to the body design, there are so many similarities to the G9 that I definitely feel like I'm in familiar territory, although there are plenty of notable differences too. The white balance, ISO and exposure compensation buttons are right where I expected to find them, but then the on-off switch is in a totally different place, and now it's a lever that takes a pretty firm push to switch the camera on and off. It's not difficult, but it's safe to say you're never going to turn this camera on by accident, which I've done many times on the G9. The camera has an LED readout on top of the camera, which is also handy, and notice that little illuminator button next to the on-off switch. That lights up the LED for when you need it at night, and in one of the many nice touches on the S1, it also temporarily illuminates some of the buttons on the back of the camera, making it much easier to find everything in the dark. The autofocus mode switch is right where I expected to find it, but it also takes a bit more of an effort to change from one position to the next. At the centre of the AF mode switch is where you find a dedicated AF area mode, and this was all very familiar right down to the human and animal detect option. And like the G9, you can work your way through the options a few different ways, including touchscreen, the control dials, or toggling the joystick. The mode dial is in the traditional spot, and you hold the button down to change modes, and it locks in place when you take your finger off the button. It's very much like what I'm used to, and it includes the create a video mode, which I haven't looked at yet, and 3 slots to save your custom settings. Below that is the release mode dial, which offers 5 different options. In addition to single shot, you have 2 different continuous shooting positions, and you can assign the burst mode you want, including high, medium and low, as well as 4 and 6K video with pre-burst if you want it. Then there's a spot for time-lapse and stop-motion animation, and the delay, which can be set to 2 or 10 seconds. One of the reasons I like the G9 so much is the great easy-to-follow menu system, and in my opinion the S1 makes a great design even better. There are 5 main sections that are all very familiar. Each one of those is divided into subsections, and each subsection has a symbol to help you find what you're looking for. This means less random searching, and because I can combine my G9 experience with this improved menu layout, I'm finding the menu really easy to navigate. The quick menu threw me a bit at first because when I first looked in there it was full of features I had no use for. Then I realised the quick menu is fully customisable, with a section in the menu that allows you to choose the layout of the quick menu, and also assign the 12 functions you want quick access to. Now I love the quick menu because I pretty much designed it myself, and I know I can keep refining it if I want to as I get more experience with the camera. I might even dedicate a separate video to how to customize the quick menu on the S1, so keep an eye out for that one because this extra customization takes a handy feature and makes it more useful than ever. Speaking of customization, the S1 gives you plenty if you want it. Go to the function button set heading in the menu and there's a guide 3 pages long to all the places where you can assign a function of your choosing. I've made very few changes because I'm only borrowing the camera, but the options are almost endless for people who like to redesign the layout to suit their style. Now I want to get on and show you some photos, so I'll quickly mention just a few more physical attributes of the S1. You can't really do justice to the quality of the viewfinder and screen just by using one camera to video the back of another camera. So I'll just say the viewfinder and screen are as good as any I've seen, maybe even the best. One extra touch that I really like, and I haven't seen before, is a focal length function that allows you to see the focal length you're on as you zoom a lens in and out. I don't even know if there's any real use in that, but for some reason I really like having it there. The S1 has an articulated screen, but it's not the same fully articulated mechanism as the G9. It will tilt up, it will tilt down, and if you press a little switch at the side it will also tilt sideways from left to right, which is obviously more useful for portrait shooting. And finally, if you're wondering about your memory cards, the S1 has 2 card slots, one for an SD card and one for the larger and faster QXD card. Because it's not my camera, I haven't invested in a QXD card yet, but I'm finding the same SDs that I use for the G9 have been more than sufficient for my use of the camera so far. So there's a quick look at some of the physical attributes of the camera, but when all is said and done, what really matters is results from that full frame sensor. Now, I know that image quality isn't just about the sensor, it's also about the lens, and the one I have on loan from Panasonic, the S-Series 16 to 35mm zoom, is very sharp. But what I love to see when I go to edit my RAW files is that they appear just as crisp blown up to 100% as they do at first glance. When it comes to noise performance, in their 2019 review, DP Review said the S1 sensor is about as good as it gets for low light and high ISO. So just to test it out, I did something I never do and took some shots of this sunset at 6400 ISO. The noise is barely noticeable at regular view, and even when blown up to 100% you could hardly call it a major problem, and a simple bit of noise reduction gets rid of it altogether. Here's the final version of that photo after some cropping and editing. And that about wraps up my getting to know you session with the Panasonic Lumix S1. I think you can tell I'm pretty impressed by this camera, and I want to thank Panasonic Australia for giving me the opportunity. The best way to really demonstrate the quality of a camera is to show some quality photos. So I'm finishing with a selection of my favourite images so far, and I'll include my exposure settings because I know people like to see them. I'll have more to show you on the S1, so once again, if you're finding my channel for the first time, be sure to subscribe before you go. I'm Andrew Goodall, this is Nature's Image Photography, thanks for watching.